everyone, I'm Jojo and this is The Sound of Jojo. Way back at the beginning of my channel, I made a video where I ranked all the stage musicals that I had seen. It was my second video ever, I think, and it is incredibly awkward. But for a while I've wanted to do a bit of an updated version of that video. Not because I have seen any more musicals since I made that video. I haven't. At least not at the theatre. But thinking it over, I realised my thoughts on the musicals themselves are a little different from what they were when I made the video 2 years ago, and the ranking might not actually be 100% correct. So we're going to do an updated version. As I said, I haven't actually seen any more musicals since I made that video. So to make things a little different, I'm going to be switching it up a bit and including some plays that I've seen. There's only 2 of them. So I'm going to have the original 11 musicals that I had in that video, as well as Warhorse and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. As I said, looking back at the video, I don't think my thoughts were the most accurate, or at least I didn't express them all that well. And honestly, it is a little hard because it's been so many years since I've seen them. The most recent play that I've seen on this list is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which I saw last year, the beginning of last year. I made a vlog. But the one I saw the most recently before Cursed Child was Mamma Mia, and that was back in 2015. So it's been quite a while since all this has happened, and honestly, in places my memory's a bit fuzzy. But I'm going to do my best. So, coming in at number 13 is Warhorse. I saw this with my school. Because my school was a boarding school, there were a lot of little side excursions on the weekends and the evenings. That's because most of the girls were stuck there all day, every day, 7 days a week for the entire term. Not everyone, some of them went home on the weekend, and I was lucky because I didn't have to board at all. But the majority of the girls were boarders, so there were a lot of side excursions, and one of them was Warhorse. Now another one was Mary Poppins. They took them to Mary Poppins. I didn't go that time, but I did go to Warhorse. And honestly, I don't really know why. I just sort of decided I wanted to go see it without really wanting to go see it, if that makes any sense at all. It is an amazing show. The way they make all the horses and everything move is just insane. But it's not really my kind of show. I mean, honestly, with the exception of Lion King, which traumatized me. I have to leave after the first song. We're not counting it. But with the exception of that, I don't know if there is a musical or play, really, that I would outright hate. But Warhorse wasn't exactly my kind of show. I'm still not quite sure why I decided to go. Very good show. The way the actors moved the horses was amazing, but just not my kind of thing. Number 12 is Dirty Dancing. Now, as I watched my previous video from 2 years ago to kind of prepare for this one, I realised I compared just about every musical that had a movie to the film version, compared the stage version and the film version, which really isn't fair. So I'm going to try and not do that in this video. Dirty Dancing was one of the shows I saw with my grandmother, and actually there are a lot on this list that I saw with my grandmother, and all of those ones have a very similar feel to them in how I think about them. The bottom line is, all the ones I saw with Nanny were ones that I wouldn't have seen on my own. I enjoyed them, but if going to the theatre with Nanny wasn't the thing I did with Nanny, I wouldn't have seen any of them, and I would have been okay with that. And Dirty Dancing, I really remember feeling kind of meh when I saw it. It reminded me a lot of Grease in a way, and we'll get to Grease in a minute. Yeah, spoilers, Grease is on this list. But something about it just didn't grab me in a way that any of the others did. It's billed as the classic story on stage, and it is exactly that. And I'd rather watch the movie. At number 11 we have Annie. And Annie is really where the whole sing the shows with my grandma feeling starts. Because my feelings on all of them are very much the same. I enjoyed it, but I don't think I'd go see it again. And honestly, I wouldn't have minded if I hadn't seen it at all. And I could probably describe half the musicals on this list with a sentence like that. Because they were the shows happening and Nanny liked taking me to the theatre. They weren't ones I heard about and went, oh my god, I have to see this. My grandmother made me watch the movie before we went and saw it, just so we knew what was going to happen. Yeah, I already knew what was going to happen. My school did the show, and that was a few years before I saw Annie with my grandmother, and I remember it just as much, if not more. Number 10, we have Hairspray. Yet another one I saw with Nanny, so same sort of feeling. I got her to do my hair like Penny Pingleton's, so that was a lot of fun. And Hairspray is just fun. I saw the movie with Nanny back when it came out in 2007. She hated it, and for a long time I hated it because she hated it. I don't hate it now. I think it's fun, and so I think the musical's fun. I guess because of how much I love going to the theatre, I'd say I enjoyed the musical more than the film. But still the best word I can come up with, and from all the memories I can put together, fun. Number 9 would be Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins is very much in hindsight, now that I think about it. Again, I saw it with my grandmother, so it definitely has the Nanny took me to it rather than I saw it and absolutely wanted to see it memory attached to it. And I guess to say the next thing I kind of have to spoil the list. Sort of. Actually, no I don't. This was the first musical I saw after number 1 on this list, and at that point I didn't want to see anything else except that. So I wasn't all that enthused to go see Mary Poppins, or I wasn't enthused at the idea of seeing Mary Poppins back when I saw it. By the time I went and saw it, I had come around to not actively pushing it away. But Nanny took me to it and it still has that memory attached to it. But if I had seen it in a different circumstance, and particularly at a different time in my life, so maybe a couple years later, I think this would be a lot higher on the list. Because I absolutely love this show, but the circumstances in which I saw it kind of drag it down a bit. Number 8, Mamma Mia. Finally we get to one that I actively chose to see. And I definitely mean actively. I saw this in London and I bought the tickets before we even got on the plane, so I definitely wanted to see this one. This one is like Hairspray, just fun. The ending where they sing Waterloo and the audience actually gets up and does a little bit of dancing with them is just fun. Fun, fun, fun. I was there with my mother and it was just fun. Also, obviously, for those who didn't know, Mamma Mia is a jukebox musical with songs from ABBA. And there were a few songs in the musical that I hadn't actually ever heard. I'd heard quite a lot of ABBA songs before, and especially since I'd seen the movie before. But there are a couple in there that aren't in the movie that I hadn't heard before that I really did enjoy. I hadn't heard Under Attack until I saw the show, but I really, really like it. It's definitely one of my favourite songs from ABBA. Number 7 is Grease. This is another one I saw with my grandmother, but Grease has a special place in my heart. My school actually did a production of Grease when I was in year 11, and I was part of the ensemble, and it was very hard work. We rehearsed a lot and we really had to push our drama teacher to let us include You're the One That I Want. But because of that, Grease just as a show has a special place in my heart. So even though this was one I saw with Nanny, it's at the top of that saw with Nanny list because I have that sentimentality for the musical. I don't know, but if you put on Beauty School Dropout, I might be able to remember the choreography and do the dance that they made us do in our production. Number 6, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Fanficky? Absolutely. Unnecessary? Completely. An amazing production to see? Yes. I am a huge Harry Potter fan. Sort of. Ignoring all the stuff that's happened with J.K. Rowling recently, because I'm as annoyed about it as everyone else is. I love the world of Harry Potter. The books themselves, I think, are okay. I would rather go see The Cursed Child than binge read the series. Yes, you heard me. It is unnecessary and fanficky, and I do not count it as canon at all, but as a production to see, it is amazing. Obviously, we can't go to the theatre right now, and just as a little aside, I hope you're all staying safe. Hope you're all staying safe and doing very well. But as a little PSA, even if you think the story of The Cursed Child is crap, do not let that completely put you off seeing it, because for me at least, I almost forgot all that because it was just such an amazing production. And this was one I definitely wanted to see. The recent one I saw with my grandmother was Dirty Dancing, and that was back in 2014. So this was definitely one I actively wanted and took steps to go and see. I mean, I went to Melbourne to see this show with my mother because she's the other big Harry Potter fan. So it wasn't just a really enjoyable show to see, it was a really enjoyable weekend. And so the memory of all that fun is attached to it. Okay, I'm going to talk about number 4 and number 5 together because they're kind of in a similar situation. And that is Legally Blonde and Love Never Dies. Now I know on my old video I put Love Never Dies above Legally Blonde on the list, but it probably more accurately is the other way around. I think I like Legally Blonde more than I like Love Never Dies. But it is very hard to tell because these both have filmed stage productions, and I have seen those a lot more times than I have seen the shows at the theatre. I only saw the shows at the theatre once, but I have watched the filmed productions over and over and over again. You can actually watch the Legally Blonde production on YouTube. Yes, it is the filmed production. It's totally legal. It's not a bootleg. So with these two shows, my memories of them have definitely been informed by the films, if not mostly overwritten, especially with Love Never Dies. Like, the filmed production of Love Never Dies was filmed in Melbourne. I saw it in Sydney. It was the exact same production. Same company, different kid playing Gustav, but other than that, same cast, same company, everything exactly the same. So what you see on the Love Never Dies DVD is exactly what I saw. So when I think of that, I think of the movie more than I think of going to see it at the theatre. Legally Blonde is a little different because it is very much not the same cast. The film production is the original Broadway cast, so very different. But when I watch Legally Blonde, I grin from beginning to end. In one word, that show just makes me happy. But my feelings on actually seeing it at the theatre, on the show itself at the theatre anyway, are a little bit more hard to pinpoint because of all of this. Really, the biggest memory of seeing it at the theatre was that I went with my friend and that we went to Stage Door afterwards and met a whole bunch of the cast. That's what I really remember from that day more than the actual show itself. Because when I think of the show, usually I'm thinking of the film. As a musical, objectively, I prefer Legally Blonde, but for my specific experience at the theatre, it's almost impossible to tell which order these two go in. Number 3 is The Sound of Music. Yes, I know. What? Sound of Music's not number 1? Well, I did make a video a few weeks back about how my least favourite thing about The Sound of Music is The Sound of Music. Specifically, the musical. Don't get me wrong, I love this musical. This movie, this musical, this thing is my life, it's my everything. But I am comparing the stage musical to all the other stage musicals. And for anyone who knows the stage musical of Sound of Music, you will know it is incredibly different. If it was the movie, it would be number 1. Probably. But because it is so different, and because of what number 2 and number 1 are, it's at number 3. Because when comparing the two musicals I have above this to the stage version of Sound of Music, they come ahead of it. If I was comparing the movie to them, the movie would beat them both. I'd definitely go see Legally Blonde once more at least if I had the opportunity. But I'm definitely going to see Sound of Music at the theatre, probably any chance I get. Number 2 is My Fair Lady. Now we're getting into the shows that I've seen more than once. I saw My Fair Lady 3 times, and it was wonderful. Obviously, My Fair Lady has the movie version, but I've seen that twice, I think, and I don't really have much of a desire to see it again. Audrey's not Eliza Doolittle, I'm sorry. Obviously, Julie wasn't Eliza Doolittle. When I saw it, she was the director, but she wasn't actually playing Eliza, obviously. But something about Audrey being in the film makes her concrete as Eliza in a way that a stage performance doesn't. I can be really harsh on Audrey, and I don't hate her, but I don't need to see her in the movie again. So that leaves me with not really wanting to think about the movie. But the stage version is really what I want my memories of My Fair Lady to be, and it was wonderful. It's classic Broadway. In fact, it's probably the most classic show on this list. Anna O'Byrne was wonderful as Eliza. She was Christine in Love Never Dies. And the guy they picked to play Henry Higgins, at least in the first 2 performances I went to, seriously is Rex Harrison reincarnated. Julie did a great job with this performance. And finally, number 1, well, not really number 1, but for this purpose, number 1, Wicked. I've seen Wicked 4 times, and it was really what kicked off this going to the theatre trend. Out of all the shows on this list, it was the first one I saw, and I fell in love. My dad was the one that actually got tickets for my mother and me as a Mother's Day present for her. So that was how I ended up seeing this one the first time. And I fell completely in love and then got tickets to it for my birthday. And then when it came back a few years later for the 10th anniversary celebration production that didn't actually happen on the 10th anniversary, I went and saw it again. And then later that same year, in 2015, I saw it again in London. Obviously, if I'm going to the theatre in London, I may as well see Wicked. May as well see the show that is my favourite. I don't know why, I don't know what it is about it, but I love this show. I always will. There's the poster up there, it's hard to see. I listened to nothing, and I mean nothing else, other than the cast album for Wicked for 6 months after I saw it. The only reason I stopped was because my iPod broke. My iPod broke and I had to get it fixed, but until that could happen, I couldn't play the Wicked album. Obviously, 6 months is now a pitiful amount of time to listen to only one album. Wicked is also unlike any on this list, because when I say I love it, I mean I love more than just seeing it. I read the books. I read the books because I love it that much. Wicked is the only one on this list that has become more than a musical to me. And for that reason, it is number one on this list. Well, not really. Hamilton's number one. I haven't seen it yet, obviously. I have tickets. But I haven't seen it yet at the theatre, which is why it's not on this list. But Hamilton is really number one. 6 months listening to nothing but Wicked. Over 2 years for Hamilton. No, I'm not exaggerating. I mentioned earlier that Sound of Music was my everything. Hamilton is my other everything. I love it just as much as Sound of Music, and I do not say that lightly. So I already know it's number one. I already know it's my favourite stage musical. But until March, it doesn't qualify on this list. And because of how much I love it, I feel it deserves its own separate video. In fact, I've made several of them. But that is it for today. Those are all the plays I've seen ranked. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what is your favourite musical or play. And how do you feel about any of the ones that are on this list? Hope you guys are all staying safe. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my video next week. So long, farewell!